Hey guys, I know you're busy, but you want to learn how to make stable diffusion images with words hidden in them, and I'm going to show you as quickly as possible. So here's the breakdown. You need to have stable diffusion on your computer ready to generate images. I recommend using the automatic 111 interface that he made. It's fantastic. Then you need a model, okay, for your image generation. Stable diffusion is a software that can generate images, but it needs a model, which is a trained file, which contains all the pixel data to go with it. Okay, and lots of people train model files and provide them to you, and you can pick whichever one you want. So let me just show you real quick on Civet AI, my favorite model hunting website. It lets you dig through models that people have trained and uploaded, and you can see the style that that model produces. And if you like it, you just download it and you upload it into your Stable Diffusion software. So with that said, back to the notepad that we're working on here. We have Stable Diffusion, we have the model checkpoint. I'm using this one called Epic Realism. It looks really good for the types of art that I've been working on. And then now you need ControlNet. So if you already have ControlNet as well, you're doing freaking awesome. But for those who don't, I'll just show you super quick. It's very easy to get it. You just go over to your newly installed, if it's new to you, interface for Stable Diffusion. This is the automatic, it's made by a guy named Automatic 1111. So everybody calls it, you know, automatic. It's a great interface. The dude did a badass job and I've been using it for months. So once you're in there, head over to the extensions tab, the very last tab there, and it gives us the ability to install extensions here. So just go ahead and click available. It's the second tab there. Click on available because we're looking for available extensions. And it says load from, and it's already loaded in here. This is the GitHub URL where the list of extensions that are even available exists. So we just hit load from, and it will then load all the extensions down right below. And you're just going to want to type in ControlNet, okay? And look for the correct one, which if you look at mine, it's called SD Web UI ControlNet. Okay, made by Mick Bill. Back to the notepad where we're going over everything. And look at that, install the ControlNet add-on. Now we just did that. And then just like Stable Diffusion software, ControlNet also needs a separate model file to be downloaded. And those are hosted in a different place than Stable Diffusion models. I'll link it in the description. And there's also a fantastic blog article I'll link that goes over all of the ControlNet models individually. Now you clearly know when you type in like, you know, an art picture of a fantasy landscape, that it's going to go ahead and generate, you know, an art picture of a fantasy landscape. But what if you wanted a big letter A right in the middle of that? Okay, GIMP, which is my favorite image editor. I'm going to create a new image. I'll explain this in a second, but hold on, let me just save this letter A. Now that we have the letter A ready, let's just say that we wanted to have a letter A be in the middle of this image. So it's pretty simple. We open our new ControlNet extension here, and here are our settings. We have 3 ControlNet tabs. All of them are identical, but it just allows us to put on 3 different ControlNet at the same time, basically. So let's just start with 0 here, ControlNet 0, which is just really number 1. And we're going to go ahead and upload our image, which is the letter A that we've created. And so now the A has been basically loaded in as a controlling image for our generation, right? So we've enabled it, and we're going to go ahead and click this little button here in between the preprocessor dropdown and the model dropdown. This little explosion is the run preprocessor button. Okay, so go ahead and click that, and it will run the preprocessor and let you see the resulting output. And what this means is this is what the preprocessor is recognizing your input image to be. And so the cool thing is, you would think to yourself, well, that's because that's what the input image is, right? Well, here's the thing. There's different preprocessors that will actually observe your input image differently, right? So if you click on this normal map one, this generates a normal map of your image that you input. So that's called a normal map. It's very common in 3D design. So yeah, any preprocessor that you choose here will have like a different way of scanning your image. And they also come with their own little settings that will also affect the way that it scans your image. So check this out. If you turn the preprocessor resolution way down when you scan for this normal map, then it's going to be very low quality and very blurry. Just to reiterate what's happening here, we're loading in an input image, and then we are willingly choosing to run it through also a preprocessor first, which is sort of like a filter of sorts, and you choose your given filter to get a slightly altered image, which is typically considered much better for controlling new image generations. You don't really want to take an image and try to make a new image generation, because that's just straight up image to image, right? And there are a lot of problems with image to image, namely controllability. So that's why we are so happy about ControlNet and the ability to control so well. I'm not going to be using a normal map, actually. I'm going to use the preprocessor just called threshold, which just simply scans for the lightness and darkness in the image, and it just very simply outlines that letter A. That's all I need. So we just want to make sure that the pre-processed image is ready to go, because this is what's going to control the generation. So if we're good to go, you know, we got our big letter A here, we're enabled, we got our resolution set, we got our, you know, we did our little preview to make sure that we like the way our letter A looks before we're dedicating to use that as what is controlling our image generation. And then we also have to choose the model that will then do the controlling. Okay, so we did the preprocessor that gets our image filtered and ready for the controlling, but then we actually need the model that does the controlling. And so I'm going to be using this one called IP2P just for this test, and just going to go ahead and hit generate with this control weight set to only 1. So that's the default. It's right in the middle. It's 1. It's technically like full strength, and it's going to try to put it with that level of strength. And as you see, we only got probably like the slightest of inspiration of that letter A going on there at the level 1, and with this specific model. Okay, so I'm going to turn up the control weight to 2 and just see kind of what looks, how we're going. And so as you see, now that's a much more recognizable letter A there. But it's still not perfect, right? Because you see it bumps there in the beginning, but then it starts to fade kind of quickly, right? Now that one was actually pretty true to the jaggedness of the letter A that I have. So I actually like that. But I did want to show you, check this out. If you open up another ControlNet, right? So open up another ControlNet, load in another image, which is going to be just the same letter A, right? And we do... we're going to do the same preprocessor, which is threshold, just simply because it just does the black and the white. But to be completely honest, we could also go with no preprocessor, because it's a black and white image, so it doesn't matter, right? We don't even need to preprocess it. That's a fun fact for you, depending on the image that you're working on. And I also just want to show you one thing too, is another preprocessor instead of threshold. Just for example, like Scribble Xdog is one of my favorites, right? Run the preprocessor to see the preview of it, and look what it does. It does like this really cool outline of it instead of the not outline, which is the fully solid one. And so check this out. This looks cool, and you can really get that line to be super thin if you bump up that preprocessor resolution. See that? And so then let's bump this up to 2. And so now we're running our second ControlNet now, but we're using Scribble Xdog. We also need to choose the model, don't forget. Now, Scribble happens to go well with the Scribble model, but do take note, any preprocessor can go with any model, okay, to try and see how you like the way that it controlled that image generation. But in this case, I'm using the Scribble Xdog preprocessor, and I'm using the Scribble model. Another note, preprocessors come pre-installed with the extension of ControlNet when you get it, but it does not come with any models. Okay, so you have to pick and choose which models you want to go download on your own. Make sure to read the blog in the description to choose which ones you want to get. I have these 3, just so you know. These are the 3 that I've been using ever since the beginning of using ControlNet, and they're really all the only ones I've ever needed. But I'm getting closer to exploring the other ones. So okay, now that we have our second ControlNet set up, and we're forcing it to be 2 strength there, 2 weight on the generation, and it's a very thin line. Okay, so it should really just force this image generation to have this really thin line of that letter A. So I mean, if anything, it should really stand out this time. And then the white in the, or the rather the lack of color in the center of the A would get nothing. Like, in other words, we're not forcing it to be anything there, so it's allowed to freely generate whatever it wants in the center there, if that makes sense. And that's why it did just that. It generated, you know, whatever it wanted in the center. It looks kind of like we're looking out of a cave there into the ocean, which contains like a rock in the middle. That's kind of the perspective I'm seeing. But now see, the problem is now we're forcing too much on it, and it's having a hard time actually finding some artistic truth to it. So what we're going to do is turn down scribble. We'll turn down scribble all the way down to 1. Because without scribble, it was actually pretty darn good, remember? So now we're just adding scribble for that little extra touch. And so let's run it again with scribble just set to 1 this time. And if it's still too significantly making it this same thing, which it really is, although that is definitely a lot better, actually. That's a lot better. That's pretty cool, actually. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down to halfway, even again. So now we're at 0.5 on the second ControlNet that we're using for this one. And it's generating right now, and I have a feeling this one will be even more freedomous for its artistic expression here. And it sure is. Look at that. Sweet, you guys. Now that is pretty cool. Now, wouldn't it be cool to make a whole book or something with all these alphabet letters here? I think I might just hop on that right now. So anyway, yeah, I hope this helps make sense. This is just the letter A. Now, if you would like to watch me for the next like 4 minutes, then feel free to stick around. I'm pretty much just going to go into focus mode and make a piece of art that is the word skyscraper, and the actual art is a skyscraper. So here we go. I'm just going to kind of enter focus mode, but I'll keep chatting. So I'm making a square image here. Type in the word skyscraper. And I'm going to use the text tools to see if I can make it taller, perhaps, but I guess not. So I'll have to manually scale it up, which makes you lose quality typically, but that's okay. So we'll go like this. Or I wonder if I actually have a tall font. That would be nice, right? I think I have a tall font. Tall boy. Here we go. I'm going to use this tall font called Tall Boy and type the word skyscraper at 200 pixels, 300 pixels. There we go. Look at that. So now I'm going to even make this taller too, though. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much what we wanted there. Sweet. So let's just export this as recently used skyscraper. There we go. All right. So I just exported my image called skyscraper, which was just a black background with white words, skyscraper, approximately positioned where I would want that to be. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh my whole Stable Diffusion page to get rid of my tutorial. And so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and type in like skyscraper, horizon, skyline, cityscape, gorgeous, and see if I can get just kind of like a quick little image for my brain to see. All right, so here's like some skyscrapers. Looking good, looking good. So we're going to go ahead and open up the ControlNet menu, click to upload an image. It'll be my word skyscraper. And I'm going to make sure the ControlNet number 1 is enabled, or 0 rather. I'm going to make sure that it looks good on the preprocessor. I chose none because it's just a black and white image, so I don't even need to pre-process it right now. At this very step, I'm choosing not to. And then I am going to basically click the model that I want to keep it controlled with, and I'm choosing P2P because I like that one as my early testing one, because it seems to have a light but reasonable control power to it. Light but reasonable. And then this control mode here, I like to turn it on to ControlNet is more important than my prompt, because it is in this case. So now we're ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and click generate. I'm ignoring loopback mode. That's a completely different type of function that is useful, but not my intention right this moment. So here's the first generation that popped out of there with the word skyscraper, and I'm looking for some similarities, and what I see is the height, right? I see the height is similar, the positioning, and that's what I like P2P's model for. It's not overwhelmingly strong, but it does put things into position, and I like that. Now, one thing to note, okay, this is very important. I want you guys to understand this. When I have this black background here, right? It is technically a part of the image, right? It is technically a part of the image. And so when I click generate, everything starts off as black. Okay, do you see that? Because we've loaded it with so much black, okay? And it starts out as black, and then it actually has to denoise from black, which makes the finishing result a dark picture. Do you see that? So that's a very important understanding of how this denoising process works if you're not getting the types of images that you like. And so with that said, if we were to turn on then a preprocessor such as thresholds to only find the white, right? And then do it. Now check this out. This is why it's interesting, right? So that actually didn't do anything, even though, but let's do invert, right? Invert the two colors. So now the white fills up the sky area, and the black is what goes where the skyscrapers are, right? And that seems to yield a brighter, yeah, see how it starts off as white now? That could be good for this type of scene where it's a bright sky. And so let's make sure I get my word skyscraper up there in the prompt correctly. There we go. So with that said, skyscraper, and we got it starting out as white now in this case because we're going for a brighter image. So we use the invert preprocessor to flip it, which is very useful. If you also had to use a different type of processor, then you could just flip it manually in your image program and then bring it to the other preprocessor. So, all right, I just did like 20 clicks and let me see. Let's see. All right, so as we can see, the P2P model is on its own not strong enough to fully carry the word all the way through the image, but it is really good for that first compositional kind of positioning there. And so with that said, we got to add a second control net here. So let's hop over to the second control net and add the same image and make sure the processing looks good, and go ahead and choose the same. We'll just do the same model, but only at 1 instead of 2 this time, and just see how we're looking. And this is always like a good way to see like where the concept is at. So it didn't do very much, so we're bumping it up to a higher number on the control. Oh yeah, and then because this one is that black background, we're gonna go ahead and invert it. There we go. See how that one looks. See, now it's like matching black and white from the first control net. All right, so the next thing I'm noticing is, see how it's getting like way overcooked, and that's because my CFG scale is set too high. It was set at 7, which is the default number actually, but it's on this current model that I'm using, it's better at like 3, so I turned that down, and this should help a lot. And then the next phase will be adding yet another control net, because we're getting a little bit more power towards the words, but not quite there yet. See how we're getting like these recognizable figures now. So just to recap, we have 2 control net units set up here identically, which is the invert preprocessor and then the IP2P model with maximized control weight and control net. And yeah, maximized. All right, so clearly the 2 P2Ps on their own are not going to be strong enough, so I'm going to add a third one, right? But this time we're going to do Scribble preprocessor, but I like this one called Scribble Xdog, and we'll hit the explosion button here to scan it and see what we're looking at. this preprocessor resolution lets me turn up and down the resolution that it preprocesses it at. So the higher the better, because it'll be much smoother. See that? Super smooth. Xdog does the line art style, kind of like a scribble. So that's why it looks like that. And yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty good. And go ahead and click that. So now we have 3 control nets going on, and all of them run the whole time. So if you see starting control step is 0 and the ending one is 1, this is actually a percentage. So 0 means 0% and 1 means 100%. So that means it starts at 0 and it ends at 100. So that means it runs the entire time. So in other words, the control net is staying on the entire time. Okay, all 3 of them are. And look at that. See, so the entire time we generated the image, the control net was forced to stay on. All 3 of them were. So this is where it starts to get interesting. Well, here's what I'm going to do. In the very beginning of the generation, I actually want Stable Diffusion to give me its own generation with no control net at all. So I'm going to go ahead and move the starting control step for all 3 control units to 0.1 so that they don't start until 10% of the way through into the generation. And then this will give Stable Diffusion the ability to create an image for that first 10% just straight from its own model. And see, that's exactly what happened at that very first 10%, if you could see it real quick, but it went so fast that you barely can. And so there we go. We got a whole lot closer. And then the next thing I'll do is hop over to this second control net. I'm going to turn down the strength now that we have that third one. So see, I'm just kind of tweaking these settings. And let's see how this one comes out. So this is with a lesser secondary control net. And see, we're definitely getting closer. So then I think what's probably lacking more is the image quality rather than the control net, and that could be the model that I'm on. So I'm going to go over to my settings here and switch the model to, we'll go to this original, actually we'll do the Rev animated model. I think that could be pretty cool. Some sort of kind of cartoony looking skyscraper, maybe futuristic. So what if I were to add like futuristic sci-fi tech, Tesla, Apple, modern, minimalistic, Dubai skyscraper. Let's see how this one looks. So if you notice, I had just switched the model completely to a new Stable Diffusion checkpoint model. And so the whole art style would be changing in this case. And so that's very interesting. And so we still need to make sure that it's skyscrapers and all that good stuff. So I'm turning that back on. And yeah. So I think what I'm seeing here is probably too strong of it for this model as compared to the previous model. It wasn't too strong. They probably have 2 different like sensitivities. So I'm turning down the strength and we'll see how this one looks. See if we can get some more city look out of it. Yeah, we're getting very just chromy text with not much city style, but it's probably a mix of things going on there. The CFG scale being so low probably doesn't help for this model. On the last model it was good, but on this one I think we gotta have it turned down. So let's see how this goes. Look at that, kind of cool looking, huh? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to spend too long on this one, guys, because I got more tutorials to make, but I really appreciate you sticking around and watching, and I hope I helped. And if you got any questions, just leave them below. Have a good one.